The loudest voice in the room is usually the dumbest. What an example of this you have seen? Finding out everyone on the internet is suddenly an expert in the operation, design, and recovery of deep submergence vehicles has certainly been an eye-opener. Well, they had to do something after they got tired of being expert military strategists and virologists. Some dude got upvoted and awarded for saying implosion only works when a machine breaks on itself only. Like a black hole. This isn't it. I went to Wiki. First example with sources. Submarines imploding under pressure. Reddit is absolutely fucked with credibility issues. Reddit is a sheep's dilemma. One upvotes or awards. The rest follow suit without question. You know the weirdos that show up at town hall meetings? Those voices. Edit, thank you for the love. There's a sign at Ramsett Park that says, do not drink the sprinkler water. So I made sun tea with it and now I have an infection. I found a sandwich in one of your parks and I want to k out why there wasn't mayonnaise on it. I'm not worried about the swine flu. I already had the swine flu. I'm worried about the turtle flu. I work loss prevention. I arrested a guy once, who when he was searched by police and had his meth taken, shouted give me back my crystal meth, at the top of his lungs, so probably that. Dude was probably thinking about withdrawals, which are way worse than a possession charge. I know some people who had to kick heroin in jail without Suboxone. Sounded like a goddamn nightmare. God, I've done this so many fucking times, but usually got out in the middle of it, so went right down to dude and scored immediately upon leaving if my ride hadn't already done so. Been free of that demon since August of 2019. Mathafuyuakas. For real though, that was my biggest fear about getting arrested every time, was just thinking about what I was about to go through. Fucking awful. Ever been to a family dinner? Immediately thought of my partner's uncle when I read the post title. He speaks at 110% volume all the time and needs a diaper wrapped around his chin to catch all the shit he dribbles out. That's my favorite insult starting now. Every class in every public school ever. Edit, for everyone saying the teacher. Teachers speak the most. They are rarely loudest. 100% yes. I had a girl in my sophomore year try and compare herself to Holocaust victims by saying that because she only eats like an apple or two a day during spring break, then she would have survived the camps. It is, without a doubt, one of the dumbest things I have ever heard in my life still. Like the girl at my university who told Professor Elie Wiesel, a very famous, now dead survivor who wrote the book Night, that she wished she could be in the camp with him to experience it with him. He just shook his head and looked like he wished he could slap a college student. That's the kind of interaction that cooled would should keep her up at night. Edit, dear Reddit, I never thought that this would happen to me. For those of you who didn't read Penthouse magazine forums in the 70s, that comment is probably lost on you. I'm amazed that I've been here for a few years and got this many upvotes for this comment. I'm sure that there have been a number of studies around this. I recall reading about one some years ago that I haven't been able to find. The basic premise is that small groups were set up in a controlled situation and given the task of coming up with some kind of a business plan. They had people observe the interactions and identify who they thought were leaders. And inevitably it was the people that spoke first and or loudest that were perceived as leaders who helped guide the team to a correct solution to this fairly subjective problem. The twist was that the study was also replicated with the groups given the task to solve a mathematical problem. Again, the loud ones were perceived as the ones who led the group to the right answer, even though in this case the answer was often objectively incorrect. Having worked in the business world for many years, I can say that I've seen many people who are in positions of leadership management solely because they were loud, assertive and confident, despite being wrong. Yeah, I'm 24 and I'm starting to realize this. Looking like you know what you're talking about is a lot more important than knowing what you're talking about. A good way to look like you know what you are talking about is to be confident. It's pretty funny when someone is talking about something you know quite a bit about. It's actually hilarious to watch someone be so confidently wrong about something and everyone just eats it up. I know I do it too. Honestly, the further I get into the professional world, I've realized how much confidence impacts everything. I've finally found my ability to be simultaneously confident and entirely out of my depth. And it's as simple as being honest. Being confident enough to be honest when you don't know something is a magic trick. Half the time 3/4 of the room was in the same boat as you and they're relieved you said something. If you can be transparent about your lack of understanding knowledge and articulate that you don't know shit about shit but you'd like to understand, that alone is super powerful. It's been my experience that displaying that bit of vulnerability gets rid of the unspoken self-consciousness that's super common in knowledge-based professions. You're not going to know every answer all the time, and that's not only fine, it's disarming. No one wants to work alongside Mr. or Mrs. Perfect. For some reason it took me 7+ years of stressing about not already knowing BS I had no business knowing in the first place to realize all of this. But such is life. Just remember, They hired you. They knew who you were and where you came from. If you're missing something you should have known beforehand, then they fucked up by hiring you in the first place. You can figure it out if they need, though, so just let them know where you stand. I don't know the answer, but I'll find out for you, is basically my motto at work. Or, along similar lines, he who laughs last laughs best, but he may get a reputation for being a little slow on the uptake. He who laughs last obviously didn't get the joke. One day the lion rounds up all the animals, brings the turtle up front and declares, "Each of you are gonna tell a joke, but if it doesn't make this guy laugh, I'll eat you." First goes the cheetah, who tells a joke so funny everyone's cracking up, but the turtle simply stares at him with a blank face, so the lion eats him. Then comes the hyena, who tells a notice funny joke, but the turtle is still silent, so the lion eats him. Then comes the elephant, who tells the dumbest dad joke you can imagine, and while the animals stare in awkward silence, the turtle laughs uncontrollably. The lion asks, "How can you laugh at that crap?" Then the turtle goes, "Oh, I just got the cheetah's joke." My ex-husband. We couldn't discuss anything. His answer to every problem was just to scream over me until he got his way. I'm here to say my mother. That woman. It's pretty common behavior. Unfortunately. Yep. For a full-on narcissist lol. Marjorie Taylor Greene. Donald Trump. Carrie Lake. Boebert. Anyone who has ever worked retail or a customer-facing position will understand this. You as an employee have next to no power over anything apart from a bit of product knowledge to learning the basics of returns exchanges. Any person who has worked in one of these positions can almost always count on at least once a week being faced with a colossal, screaming idiot who will fight tooth and nail over the most idiotic minutiae when they are dead wrong. I don't know if it stems from a need to be correct, narcissism, or from just plain stupidity that they can never concede in a fight. But it is at least a weekly occurrence in retail. My most recent example was when my partner and I were in Muji, an Asia-anthemed home goods and clothing store. The ambience of these stores are super chill, with diffusers going, soft music, and so on. As we were coming in, a woman was losing her mind on the cashier because a pair of socks scanned up at, let's call it $10 when they should have been $8. Numbers are made up because this was a month or so ago. She is arguing impressively that these socks scanned up wrong and they should be free. The cashier has the what look on her face and is calmly explaining that no, she can get a refund for the difference. This lady was not having it, seemingly pulling what she believed was the ultimate trump card. She shouted, "Well, other stores have policies where they give you the wrong scanned item for free." The cashier again, without a breaking a sweat, said, "Well, that isn't our policy. I can either refund you the difference, refund you the whole thing, or you keep it as it is." This loop went on for much longer than it had to before the angry customer relented, visibly disturbed that this mad-up policy did not exist at Muji. I will add that she was talking, yelling so that the entire store could hear, of course, instead of calmly discussing the issue and taking the solution like a normal adult. Was this in Canada? It kind of sounds like she's talking about the Scanner Price Accuracy Code, which is a voluntary set of policies governing how retailers deal with scanner price discrepancies. But it's not a universal thing, except in Quebec, and you aren't automatically entitled to the item for free unless it costs less than $10, otherwise you get $10 off the lowest advertised price. Regardless, she sounds obnoxious. You are correct, I thought it was only in grocery stores. Thanks for clarifying. Me. College anthropology class. Age 19. About 5 minutes into day 1. The teacher opened the floor for any questions, no matter how dumb you may think they sound, about biology, anatomy, anthropology, science in general, just to get the class comfortable with asking questions and breaking the ice. People timidly asked questions like, how old is the universe? What kind of butterflies were common in ancient Egypt? This dummy here voluntarily stood up, nobody else did, even the teacher was on a stool, and theatrically asked just why the heck male mammals have nipples. Everyone turned and stared at me and began laughing. The teacher was like, okay, do you have an actual question? Lady, that was my question. I grew up in charter schools, which means little to no regulation on the math and science classes I had to take. I'd literally never taken a science class beyond 6th grade, and even then, we never went into nipples because the conservative Christians running my school wouldn't have had that. I really thought most people were wondering like I was lol. I'm aware it wasn't my fault and it wasn't that dumb of a question. But for a college-level anthro class, yeah. Now when people are like, no question is too dumb, I'm like, oh yeah? Not the worst question I've ever heard in a class. Dumbest one ever was when I was taking a CPR first aid course and someone asked why choking resulted in death. One time I was in a CPR class and one of the other engineers started arguing with the instructor about the instructions she was giving us. She said the new method did not involve checking for a pulse. only to check if they were breathing, since it's much easier for a less trained person to check for breathing than to get a pulse from someone. This person kept insisting that you could really hurt a person if their heart was still beating but they had stopped breathing. The instructor explained that if they were not breathing and their heart was still beating, it would stop beating very shortly due to their lack of breathing, and that this is what studies had found to give a victim the best chance of survival. This guy kept going for like 2 more minutes before finally saying, well, I guess we'll just have to agree to disagree, and the instructor said, well, I'm the one handing out certifications, so if you want one you'll just have to agree. Which was pretty hilarious. There were more than a few audible chuckles, and that guy had to sheepishly go along with the instructions for the demonstrations. Wow, she killed him faster than choking. Jim Cramer. Haha, my daughter started calling him the yelling guy when she was a toddler. Grandpa is watching the yelling guy on TV. 20 years later it still fits. Are you looking to short whatever he says to buy? Cause he gives some terrible advice pretty regularly. Just buy $shim. Ariel Winter being convinced Lance Armstrong was an astronaut. PSH, what a moron. We all know it was Louis Armstrong that walked on the moon. Alright, but seriously, the Armstrong parents must be proud. Giving birth to so many famous boys. I wonder how family gatherings were. Just each brother one-upping each other. Until the disappointment walks in and everyone has to say, stretch for once please, just wear some pants. Me. My roommates were looking for a PlayStation controller and my stoned ass was loudly mocking them for not seeing it right in front of them. I thought it was fucking hilarious they couldn't find the controller sitting right there on the couch. After a few minutes I finally said, okay. It's right there on the couch, dummies. They looked at me so pissed and yelled, we know about that one. Why do you think we keep saying the other controller? We need 2 controllers, stupid. How many do you see? All in good fun, but man, I felt like a tit. Damn, this is so relatable. I am not a politician like others on this comment section are mentioning as examples. Nor am I a raging bigot or self-proclaimed expert on submarines. But damn if this isn't mayoral. I feel like this is a silly example that average person more likely to encounter. We all have our smug moments, and get a little too far up our own ass or dug into a wrong argument. I just think it's important to laugh at yourself when you realize you're the dickhead. There was a kid in school. He was a new kid in 5th grade. I was in 7th. This kid was nuts. He also was pretty overweight. He would scream at teachers and get into fights a lot. Probably I was the only one who wasn't actively bullying him. One day, towards the end of the school year, he was shouting random stuff, mob gibberish. It was a long time ago, and running back and forth in the hall. Well, after a few minutes he ran into a pretty thin wall. He didn't get through it, but he landed inside it. He was kicked out of school that year. Please tell me he yelled ooh yeah like the Kool-Aid guy when he ran through the wall. Would have been cool, but I'm European and I didn't even know what Kool-Aid was back then. Sophomore year, honors biology in high school. Teacher was talking about vestigial structures, or body parts that aren't as useful as they used to be due to evolution. She used male nipples as the example for humans. Note, I'm aware that male nipples are largely not considered to be vestigial, as men only lactate under very extreme conditions. Kid confidently raises his hand and goes, no, that isn't true. Because when I squeeze my nipple, white stuff comes out. The silence that followed was truly something else. Male nipples again? Where is the guy who wanna know? You fart attack 9/11, hope this helps. Ha 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 ha. This made me feel quite better. Thank you, Lamau. Anti-vaxxers. We had a few diehard crazies who gather in a park every weekend and yell utter nonsense into a microphone about the Illuminati, China, and how we are headed to becoming a police state. Keep in mind this was last year when all restrictions were being lifted. We had that in my city well after restrictions were lifted. I think the same people are still out there and are complaining about 15-minute cities. It's literally just an urban planning concept that communities should be walkable, bikeable within 15 minutes for your daily needs, work, food, school, groceries, etc. Somehow it's become a conspiracy that cars are going to be banned and that no one will be allowed to leave a 15-minute zone around their house. I grew up in a 15-minute city. It's called a town. Don't tell the conservatives, they might get worried. Small towns are communist manifestations now. Real Americans have to drive for 45 minutes just to buy milk. Not like those big city fat cats that can afford to walk. Congress. You'll notice that the ones who are the dumbest are the ones who are physically the loudest. It's almost as if they think being loud will make them right. In my experience, if your points are sound and your argument strong, there is no need to get loud or attack the other person. When I wore a Nirvana shirt to work and this dude came up to me and said I probably didn't know any Nirvana yet, it's my favorite band. I feel you. I wore a Star Wars shirt to work once and overheard some coworkers talking about how I'd probably never even seen any of the movies. I'm a nerd anyway, but Star Wars ain't exactly niche. Natalie Portman did a photoshoot a few years ago, wearing a Stop Wars shirt in the Star Wars font, and the comments were hilarious. Exact in line with your coworkers. I remember that. Paraphrased from rough memory. Guy 1, she's probably never even seen the movies. Guy 2, dude, she was in the movies. Guy 2 could have been a different gender. It's been a while since I've seen that comment string. Skip Bayless. How the hell him, Colin Cowherd and Stephen A. Smith have a job is beyond me. If any of those show up on my TV, I turn the damn thing off. Those people get paid to make dumbass opinions so viewers will talk about their show. The viewers who get triggered by that and go on the internet to bring up their names and get them more clicks are the real dummies. When someone thinks that shouting in English at a person who does not speak English will help them understand more. Same with those with a belief if they shout at deaf PPL they'll understand them. Bestie, no, shut it. Every MLM predator, when they find out someone has been diagnosed with cancer, their miracle products not only claim to cure cancer but pH balance your blood and fight off the harmful effects of that nasty chemotherapy, which they tell you that you shouldn't even do, and instead, drink their incredible drinks or take the always overpriced supplements they sell. People who prey on people with cancer to make a sale are the lowest of the low, and always the loudest and first to tell you how your doctors are wrong. Yes, I'm speaking from personal experience. I was absolutely flooded with these people when I was diagnosed. One of them got to my mom and conned her out of $1,000 because my mom was so scared about my diagnosis. I took the supplements home out of guilt because mom spent all this money, and brought them to my oncologist to check. He just rolled his eyes and said to trash the whole lot. The products most likely would have done nothing at best, and at worst interfered with the chemo uptake. I was not going to take any chances and toss them all. Why isn't the government doing anything about these scams? Listen to the podcast The Dream. The court actually ruled against MLMs, but the DeVos family stepped in and made sure that ruling was squashed. Bush and Clinton were paid hundreds of thousands of dollars to speak at Amway conferences. The MLM story history is so insane. The most upvoted comment on Reddit is what appeals most to the average person. So less most stupid and more most colloquial. I don't even know why people still bother asking those most underrated questions. They have about an hour of being interesting before all the top results are entirely accurately rated. Gotta say it. Sayings like these deter people with valid points from speaking up, while also putting people with the confidence to actually speak up in a bad light. If you speak up, you get butted with the idiots, who speak up because they don't know when to shut up. I interpret it as a person that talks over others and doesn't let them voice their opinion, rather than someone with a valid point speaking up in a respectful manner. You can speak up without silencing others. I had a client call me. He spent an hour berating me over the phone about his money. I couldn't get a single word in. I couldn't even respond while he basically fast talked and yelled over the phone. While he was doing this, I was still reading the documents that he was sending me. He was terrible at contracts, terrible at negotiations, and really fucking bad with money. Creatively not bad, but completely an unsorted nightmare. I finally completed a full review of a file he sent later that day. I was already in the process of building a career plan. It turns out he didn't pay his taxes on his single shareholder corporation, so the government was garnishing his corporate wages. As a coincidence, the idiot opened a second single shareholder corp and paid himself through that in order to avoid the garnish. Then when the government caught on, he did it again. 3 corporations still owing money to the government and all of that debt. I told him that it doesn't matter since you end up still owing, so you might as well shut or pay the debts and be done with it. When I told him that all he had to do was write a check to the government's tax agency for X amount and the wages wouldn't be garnished anymore, he screamed at me again for not being on top of this and for offering a solution that cost him money. Even though when it comes to taxes and governments we are a DNFW policy. I then responded by saying, well, you just started using my services a week ago. I don't even have your full file yet. Yet I was able to figure it out. You can consider my services finished. I will be terminating our contract. He freaked out and begged me to stay. I told him it's been 1 week and you just spent 2 hours treating me terribly. No, thanks. I have better business elsewhere. He then emailed my CEO to complain about what had just occurred. When I explained to her the situation and what he had just said to me, including a pretty terrible joke about BIPOC people, I am BIPOC, and a quip about Jewish people, I am Jewish, and complained about immigrants making the government worse. My mother is an immigrant who worked in a union, as well as showed her how bad his finances were. Well, let's just say my CEO told me to leave it with her. She blackballed him. I never saw that moron again.